You think happy hour means discount cocktails at a chain bar. In medieval times, happy was more of an aspiration, like calling the stocks a free spa day. Bottoms up. Sure, it's the top that should worry you. Let's get one thing straight, order water, and you'd better have your will in order. Cholera, typhoid, and things that don't even get names yet. Your village well is a cauldron of microbial roulette. Not just a bit of grit and a funny aftertaste, but full-color 3-day dysentery with a side of fatality. So you drink ale. Weak, flat, suspiciously warm, but technically safer than a water feature at a rat convention. Congratulations, your hydration strategy is to get just sauced enough to survive. Day drinking is a hobby, it's a medical emergency. The peasants, the priest, even the nuns all throwing back pints from sunrise to, well, not sunset. No one's tracking time with hourglasses. Time is measured in how close am I to passing out in the pigsty units. The average adult drinks 3 to 4 liters of low-strength ale daily. Kids get it too, juice or milk, unpasteurized, potentially lethal. So yes, 6-year-olds are publicly sipping 0.5% beer. Happy hour starts at breakfast. Forget pub trivia night. Imagine medieval taverns, one tiny window, one surly innkeeper, a roof designed to leak directly on you and only you. The atmosphere is a mix of rotting hay, sour sweat, spilt blood, and the general panic of a populace who believes in demonic possession. No coasters or peanuts, just splinters and the lingering taste of dirt. If you're lucky, someone's busking in the corner without a mandolin. If you're unlucky, he's got the plague. Drunk looks different here. There's no texting your ex, only shouting your family secrets to a room so dense with body odor it could legally be called weather. Stumble out and you might end up in the Lord's ox cart. Instant fine, maybe lose a hand if the justice is feeling spicy. Let's cut to what passes for consequences. Spill your beer on a knight's boots. Now you're entertaining the dungeon rats. Try not to black out. You can't afford the ransom for your own teeth. That's just Tuesday. Back then, overindulgence wasn't a funny story but a genuine risk of waking up with inverse inventory. Even nobility couldn't booze in peace. Every festival spirals into competitive vomiting or bloody brawl, or someone becomes a cautionary tale whispered for the rest of the century. Like Yelp but with blacksmiths instead of stars. Noble parties sound better. Then you factor in the ratio of honeyed wine to guests vomiting in the hedge maze. Eleanor of Aquitaine throws a bash with imported Bordeaux. Half the royal court will nurse migraines stronger than most peasant meals. The king's cupbearer is a full-time taster. Someone's always too drunk to kneel. Wine stains on ermine duels over spilled mead, lords sleeping it off in the moat. You get the idea. Meanwhile, your neighbor drinks small beer. That's the gentle euphemism for brewing so weak even the rats sneer, but it's the only thing keeping the worms at bay. Small beer is homeopathic regret. Room temperature, half fermented, passing for lunch if you pretend hard enough. Congratulations, your gut is now a habitat for every strain of sadness known to science. And it's not just the men. Medieval women drink their share, especially nursing mothers. Good for the milk, the doctor says by candlelight while wiping lice off his sleeve. The children, the elderly, even the sick raise your mug and hope for the best. Nobody's sober. Half the population is buzzed, the other half has the shakes. Being alive means being slightly off your axis. Let's talk consequences. Someone passes out in the street, possible. Someone breaks a leg dancing, likely. Someone finds themselves at the center of a witchcraft rumor, all because they tried to lead a round of drinking songs exactly half a beat off. Now the priest is involved. Vice's bred disaster. More alcohol means more mistakes, more bobbies, more accusations, more funerals. At least the after party is already scheduled every Sunday. And because nothing improves on medieval suffering like government interference, the assize of ale rolls through local authorities testing brews so peasants don't die faster than they can be taxed. If your beer fails the test, you pay, in coin, in public shamming in stocks outside the tavern where everyone can call you names and hurl turnips. Like airmen, but for humiliation. Think you'd pace yourself. Good luck. Your work hours top 14 a day, plowing, thrashing, or hauling carts of the dead. Beer isn't optional, it's bread, water, and therapy wrapped in one dirty mug. A pint at midday, another at dusk, a few in between. You're drinking to stay lucid barely, or dull enough that none of it matters. One more pint, they say. One more mistake. Everyone in on it, peasants, priests, nobles. A leaner of Aquitaine throws ragers with imported Bordeaux while your neighbor drinks small beer, so weak it's basically room temperature regret. Someone's always blackout, someone's always in the stocks. If you don't recognize the drunk fool, it's you. Morning after. That same raw-throated, bile-mouthed, straw-stuck experience, a combination of hangover, hypothermia, and medieval depression. Still alive barely. Still thirsty. Water's still poison, so you drag yourself to the barrel and start again. Bottoms up. Welcome to happy hour. Still medieval. Congratulations, you're alive in the Middle Ages. Shame about the water. You want to hydrate, not hallucinate, right? That's rich because every bucket of well water is just soup for bacteria. A medieval spiked seltzer minus the fun part. Remember, you're surrounded by pigs, peasants, and waste, but somehow everyone keeps forgetting to invent chlorine tablets. Drinking water is extreme sports now. 50-50 chance, sip or suffer. So you pivot to ale, which is basically water plus yeast minus self-respect. A noble swap, because microbes hate alcohol, so you get to black out from safety instead of cholera. Literally, the village was one session IPA away from an obituary. But let's not get smug. Ever heard of dysentery? Hope you like bathroom runs, except it's one shared hole in the ground and the queue never moves. That's not a line for the club, it's the cause of the Black Death. You know you've hit rock bottom when your healthiest beverage is small beer, a watered-down lager brewed by someone with the personal hygiene of a medieval ferret. Welcome to hydration, medieval style. Want to go sober? Try the well. Too bad the neighbors dump everything that's not nailed down straight into it. Dead animals live mistakes the local tax collector's dignity. Sometimes they're all the same thing. Was that an eel or a plague vector? Doesn't matter, bottoms up or straight down. And yet people still argue about which source is less suicidal. Rivers, industrial runoff minus the factories, just piles of rotting leather, laundry chemicals, open sewage, and whatever floated downstream from the last town that burned down. Cistern. Tastes like roof tiles and pigeon wings with a thick top note of stagnant regret. If you want mineral content, you'll get it, plus extra crunch from the lime scale. People drank water with the same dead-eyed gamble as eating expired yogurt behind a 7-Eleven could be fine. Could be a 3-day fever and enough vomiting to turn your bed into a crime scene. City dwellers tried to get clever. Londoners built conduits, hand-carved pipes from the cleanest hill. Then pigeons and rats colonized them with medieval airbomb efficiency. Lead poisoning. Sure, but at least it wasn't typhoid this week. Stat: in 14th century Paris, over 80 of public fountains were declared unfit to drink, but the official sign just said shrug. The real party trick is when the water itself kills you faster than the booze. Raw water isn't a trend, it's a death sentence. In London 1349, you could spot a corpse before you saw a clean cup. Countless records one conclusion: if you die out here, you die moist. So you drink more booze. Problem solved, until you're pickled inside and can't remember your own name. Congratulations, you've cured dysentery with cirrhosis. A doctor might try new cures like bloodletting, because why not subtract more fluids from the equation? The body is a wonderland, yours is mostly a leaky sieve. Try something fancy. Filter water through sand in a sock if you're rich. Own a cloth filter. Congratulations, you just turned the puddle into slightly less of a biohazard. Herbal purification. If you thought rosemary could cure giardia, you probably also believed in friendly fairies and tax relief. Some households kept barrels of rainwater and prayed it would kill fewer people than the well. Spoiler, they got dysentery with a slight citrus tang. Let's not forget the holy types. Monks boasted water purified by prayer. That's Latin for still smells like moss and dead mule, but we lit a candle. God's filtration system, hope incense, and early onset gout. Jars of cloudy water passed around with all the reverence of a frat house shot glass. You pray, you chug, you regret everything in Latin. Hygiene, pure theory. You haul water in wooden buckets if they're not sprouting mushrooms or leaking like a toothless old man. Hauling it back to your hovel, you pass livestock who freely redecorate the path with nature's biohazard. Step lightly or bring extra shoes. Cold water could numb your teeth and your prospects. Hot water. The kitchen only heats enough for the noble's annual bath. Then there's Jon Snow, not the ripped one, the other guy, who won't be born for centuries, so the local epidemiologist is still just a guy called Thaddeus, the guy who guesses. He says drink what the animals ignore. Great. Just wait for the cows to finish vomiting and then jump in. Ever try boiling your water? Firewood costs a fortune. You want pure water, you just burned next year's rent. If you can't afford fire, you can always settle for room temperature, also known as body temperature plus a dash of despair. Your options: drink to forget, drink to regret, or let the water finish you off before the rats do. Every mealtime's a Russian roulette. 1 fork, 2 cups, 0 hope. Sip slowly. Hold your breath. Ignore the floating bits. Because forget hangovers, the real headache comes from whatever's breeding in your bucket while you stare into the fire plotting your questionable choices. Still thirsty? Good. The water is too. Stay parched. There's always tomorrow's rain, assuming you make it that far and the roof doesn't leak more than your dignity. You could get burned at the stake for serving beer with too much foam. Not an exaggeration, just a Tuesday if you're an alewife in medieval Europe. You want empowerment? Great. Here's a broom, a pointy hat, and a guaranteed trip to witch court for the high crime of making people tipsy. Let's get this out of the way. Medieval men brewed like what, 1 in 50 pints. If you tasted their stuff, you'd know why. The alewives did all the work. They built the recipes, kept the yeast alive, and handled drunk guys with the diplomatic skills of a jaded nightclub bouncer. Until, surprise, suddenly, the local priests and guild bros started squinting at their spice cabinets like this was Hogwarts in the middle of a bad trip. You add a little rosemary, clean your cauldron, hang a cat by the hearth for the mice. Suddenly, the neighbors, who have no eyebrows because they self-lit the hearth again, claim you conjure the devil for good head retention. England's Alice Keitler literally got run out of town for bewitching beer. Another round of applause for medieval HR policies. Want a job interview? Here's your checklist: keep the ale unspoiled, your thatch roof unburned, and your accusers unsuspicious. Fail at any. Welcome to manorial inquisition. Selling beer was basically crowd control meets live-action Clue, but everyone's Mrs. Peacock with a pitchfork. Call it proto-craft beer culture. Only the gatekeepers wore judges' robes and accused you of sorcery if your ale outperformed their swamp juice. Sound familiar, IPA guys? Sorry, no beards or ironic tattoos. Just a public trial, execution, and maybe a souvenir finger bone for the relic trade. Of course, your tools don't help: pointy hats so customers spot you at market, a broom outside to signal ale on tap. Bundle some dried herbs and congrats, that's witchcraft. Ever wonder why every Halloween you're that stereotype? Blame 14th century marketing plus a little clerical PR. Turns out getting ahead of your time is a death wish if you're the wrong gender. Brew 2, strong, you're a temptress. Brew 2, weak, you're a cheater. Brew just right, and the only person impressed is the guy selling pitchforks at the gallows side pop-up market. Everyone drank your product. No one wanted to know your name, unless they needed someone to blame for their next blackout bender or crop failure. Let's do some quick math. Medieval ale, 3 liters per person per day. Bobby's 2. Water was a gamble, but your beer kept whole villages hydrated, tipsy, and only sometimes dead. Guess who made every stinking barrel? Not Brother Thomas or the local lord. Just you braving the boil, minding the mash, dodging unemployment by accusation. Think you're in the clear if you never served moldy brew. Funny, turns out malting barley gets you more heat than burning it. In Germany, testimony from 1487, a woman hanged for allegedly adding bewitched hops. Her crime? Surpassing her neighbor's output. In Flanders, Annick de Gale, arrested because her ale sold out faster than her rivals. Spoiler: medieval Yelp reviews came with shackles. Then the taxes show up. Now the lords and city guilds suddenly love brewing. The first craft beer bros, only now with the backing of church law and armed guards. Monasteries publish recipe books, the men get rich. You, audited, fined, or flat out disappeared. After 1550 in England, female brewers dropped from nearly half to single digits. You could dig up the tax ledgers if the worms hadn't finished eating the evidence. Proto-scare tactics: local priest calls a sermon about women who poison the soul. Town crier adds a bit about foul spirits in female vessels. Pretty soon any woman with basic chemistry skills and an honest day's work ends up on a woodpile. Like airmen, but for pain. Don't want to burn. Hope you like poverty. Brewing licenses cost more and require guild membership, which means male relatives' kickbacks and someone vouching you're not a dangerous character. Fail here and you're back to bad bread rations or indentured servitude with an occasional free trial of public humiliation. Men finally take over brewing once taxes get interesting. Suddenly, safer than water becomes government revenue stream. Spoiler: the witch burnings don't stop. They just move the paperwork. Go ahead. Raise your goblet to the women who turned grain to gold and ended up on history's blacklist. Still thirsty? Of course you are. Still chained. Still not dead. 3 drinks in and suddenly everyone at this feast thinks they're the king's bastard son. You think medieval booze was about fun. Try again, it's mind control in a pewter cup. Consent. That's for the afterlife. Party rules medieval edition. Lord gets hammered, peasants get hammered, but only one of you wakes up with a hangover and the other wakes up missing a sheep or dignity. Somewhere between the 6th round and the floor, the social ladder crumbles. You're a serf serving stale ale and whatever the baron left behind. Every cup you pour is a job application with a side of blackmail. But liquid courage in this world is more like liquid liability. Ale is just the onboarding process for humiliation. Your boss doesn't just want you to sing, he wants your confession and your wallet. One too many sips and suddenly your opinions on tithes are public domain. Forget about venting at happy hour. The table's booby-trapped. Say the wrong thing. That's Thursday's execution fodder. Hope you like crowds. Big shock. Your new courage isn't protection, it's bait. Medieval lords love drunk confessionals. Hey, tell me what you really think about grain taxes, peasant. Not suspicious at all. Say something clever, lose your tongue. Say something stupid, lose your head. HR. Just a chopping block with excellent benefits. Just loosen up, its tradition. And by loosen up they mean spill secrets, swear oaths, maybe sign away your land for the promise of one more round. Hostility wrapped up as hospitality. refusing the next ale, rude and statistically lethal. Table manners here feature less silverware, more peer pressure, and only sometimes end in stabbing. Here's a stat you didn't ask for: 70 of medieval legal disputes involved alcohol. Coincidence? Sure, in knights, armor was ergonomic. Justice isn't blind, it's blackout drunk and can't remember who started the brawl. You wake up fined, flogged, or trapped in stocks eating rotten bread for likes. Still better than LinkedIn endorsements. Ever heard of trial by ale? You haven't, because they just called it Tuesday. Disputes: neighbor poisoned your cow, monk insulted your beard. Get sloshed until someone confesses, collapses, or gets thrown out the window. Verdict delivered by whoever stands up first. Neighbor disputes ended and he who pukes last wins. You're not exactly fighting for justice. You're fighting your gag reflex. You get invited to the big feast, translation forced to dance in front of everyone, while a knight in rusty mail tries to outdrink the bishop. Spoiler: the bishop wins, the bishop throws up, the bishop excommunicates somebody's ox out of spite. Meanwhile, you're clapping until your hands bleed, praying nobody notices your cup still half full. Forgot to mention the tavern keeper. Half bartender, half spy, all opportunist. You think you're swapping gossip. He's writing your memoir for a discount with the hangman. Don't worry, everyone's secrets die with the drink. Until somebody remembers, yells, and now you're reenacting Game of Thrones with more mud and less sex appeal. It's not just lords and knights playing at vulnerability. The abbey's not immune. Monks brew, sip, spill scripture, and spill complaints. 3 goblets in and the abbot's admitting he hates chanting and wants a divorce from Gregorian music. Everyone's equal when their mouth runs faster than their brain. Divinity, still drunk by morning prayers. And then there's the little matter of hospitality. Refusing a lord's toast is basically heresy mixed with tax evasion. Statistically, you'll say yes. Then you'll say yes again. Next morning, you wake up in a new shirt, a stranger's barn, and half your possessions have volunteered for campaign season. Congratulations. Generosity runs in your blood, mostly because someone sliced your purse at midnight. Speaking of traditions, the rite of the first cup. Picture your mug, finally full after an hour of waiting. The baron grabs it, downs half, proclaims it good enough for peasants, wipes his mouth on your sleeve and hands back the dregs. Try refusing and enjoy the rustic hospitality of an oubliette. No door, no light, no sobriety. Still think you're equals just because the lord's face splints into the venison. Equality is horizontal alignment. Everyone ends up on the floor. Peasant priest or petty noble drunkenness is the only democracy on offer. The first to pass out wins. Avoidance: the last one standing gets the honor of cleaning up the bishop's stomach lining. Need a metaphor? Medieval parties are a group text you can't leave. You reply because not replying is grounds for suspicion or arrest. Walk out early and you're antisocial. Stay late and you're bedding down next to a piggery and a pile of regrets. Medieval networking, where the connections are literal chains, and the only endorsement is, he held his liquor, sort of. The real superpower here: booze makes everyone equal, equally humiliated. Lords stagger, peasants crawl, abbots drop confessions you can't unhear. Courtly love poems become ransom notes for your self-respect. The candles burn low, the secrets leak out, somebody weeps into bread, still chained, still not dead, still not king. The tap's still flowing, but your luck ran dry after last call. Carbs or buzz, pick one. That's medieval dieting in a nutshell, except you never get the nut, just a stale loaf or a mug of regret. You're in the 14th century and dinner is gluten-free. It's free if you survive the harvest. Welcome to the world where every meal is a pop quiz, and every wrong answer sends your immune system straight to game over. Here's the cute punchline: grains keep you alive unless someone with more power wants a drink. Then you're fasting, like it or not. The church says bread is holy, science says beer is safer, reality says neither gets you enough calories to last the week. Simple equation: UV's barley, barley versus mold, mold versus starvation. If that sounds like a fun reality show, congrats, you're about to be voted off the island by the local miller. Bread and beer, two sides of the same diseased coin. Nobles say, let them eat cake. Actually, they just chug another ale and raise grain taxes. Monks play Breaking Bad with barley, turning calories into delirium and profit. You get leftovers. Think you're getting both bread and beer. Sure, and tomorrow you'll win the lottery and invent refrigeration. Spoiler, you're getting neither. Picture lunch: a crust you could use as a weapon, or a thin broth that's basically bread cosplay. Solid food just means nobody stolen it yet. Beer is liquid bread. If bread came laced with hallucinations and the faint taste of peasant despair. Try explaining the trade-offs: eat your grain, stave off hunger for 36 hours. Drink it, forget for 8. Peasant priorities: 1, not dead; 2, not dead right now; 3, C1. Let's do the numbers. 1 acre of decent wheat equals maybe 8 loaves of bread, unless you have rats, rain, or a baron with a drinking problem. Factor in the boil the same grain twice. Trick for beer: so weak you'd have to down a barrel to feel anything but emptiness. Pro tip: you can't. The fun math problem: enough beer to kill bacteria, not enough grain for bread. Result: full bladder, empty belly. You think supply chains are fragile now. Try living in a village where the mill breaks, the baker retires with scurvy knees, and half your grain is mandatory protection for your lord's next tavern crawl. Don't like monopoly capitalism? Meet the medieval malt monopoly. The abbey has the yeast, the miller has the stones, the lord has the soldiers, and you have. Wait, where did your barley go? Now water. Contradiction: the thing keeping you hydrated is more likely to kill you than heal you. Thames brown, Rhine green, or local flavor, with hints of livestock and cholera. Pick your poison. Beer isn't just a luxury, it's the only thing you can drink without rolling the dysentery dice. You trade your last toenail for 1 clean cup of water, but you're out of toenails and luck. Hunger's not a meme here, it's the background noise. The really dark joke: bread riots, as if there was enough bread to riot over. Midwinter, you're gnawing bran cakes, medieval for sweepings plus hope. Taste test: bitter, gritty, and mostly regret. The village vegetables are actually weeds. Don't ask what's in pottage. The answer is whatever's left, and what's left is nothing. Taxes. There's your real enemy. Grain: Levi's tithes to the church, rent to the Lord, 1 portion for old man, famine; 2 for death. That pounding at the door isn't opportunity. It's the grain counter counting what you haven't hidden well enough. Ever wonder why all the barns are padlocked? Because someone's always stealing tomorrow from today. Drink beer: work drunk, trip into a ditch, bleed out. Eat bread, weaken, catch plague, die slow. Monks drink 2 liters of ale a day, peasants get the runoff, the table scraps the divine dregs. You get to choose tipsy and doomed, or sober and starving. No, you can't balance your macros. By spring your options are: seed your last grain and pray, or eat it and pray harder. Hedge your bets means foraging for roots the pigs wouldn't touch. The best case scenario: survive, remember nothing, lose all your teeth, and line up to do it again. Medieval brunch: same slot, same mistakes, fewer teeth. Modern brunch is avocado toast and a mimosa. Medieval brunch is boiled bark and a prayer. You fail the pop quiz, you don't get another try. You're still chained, still not dead. Yet. Choose beer, blame your hangover. Choose bread, blame your hunger. Either way, someone else wins. You just get the bill: payable in pain, payable in bones. Still hungry. Of course you are, you'll stay hungry, that's the plan. Bread or beer isn't a choice, it's a threat. And by the time you pick, someone else is already eating your share. The local lord is making toast and pouring ale. Spoiler, you're not even at the table. You think drinking yourself stupid in medieval times came down to pass the ale and pray you don't vomit in your shoes. Wrong. The real enemy wasn't liver failure. It was the tax man with a scroll and a hangover. Imagine IRS agents armed with rusty knives diagnosing your pint like Gordon Ramsay with a vendetta against barley. Drinking was mandatory, not in the fun way. Water tried to assassinate you daily, so you needed something fermented to avoid a high-stakes episode of dysentery the home game. But just as you finally learned to ignore the rat in your mug, here comes King Edward III, deciding he wants in on your Tuesday blackout. So you're in England 1340, and every time someone farts near a barrel Parliament huddles to invent a new booze tax. There's a levy for selling ale, a fee for brewing it, an extra for unusual strength, which is tax code for this might actually make you happy. Also, the king can buy new armor, burn a witch, or invade France for the 13th time this century. Welcome to a world where booze is both medicine and a municipal ATM. The crown taxed every barrel tumbler and cough syrup that dared to bubble. The ale conner literally walked around in leather pants, sat in your beer and declared, "Yep, this is taxable. Congratulations." The man just butt-tested your livelihood. It's not a joke, real seat of government stuff here. If you're wondering, his qualifications were as rigorous as a BuzzFeed quiz. Step 1, wear leather. Step 2, sit in random puddles. Step 3, declare yourself judge, jury, and excise collector. 1, cheek stamp. Later you're either paying up or explaining to your neighbors why your entire week's wages taste like laundry day at the brothel. So you get creative. You brew in a back alley, you swap recipes with the nuns, you call your concoction medicinal and hope God's too busy to notice. Spoiler, the king notices. His men show up faster than cousins at a lottery jackpot. Anyone caught dodging tax gets a fun-filled trip to the local pillory starring as village idiot with bonus diarrhea. Think medieval Yelp review, except the comments section is actual stones. It gets creative because it has to. Tax justice in the 14th century. Improv with whips and rotten eggs. City bailiffs crash your living room, seize your kettles, and leave you with a fine worth more than your house. Half the time your punishment fits the crime, broke, thirsty, and now infamous for trying to rob the king of his pennies. Good luck getting a new job. Injustice, of course. But it gets worse. Welcome to Rotgut, the medieval flavor of bootlegging. Half ale, half blindness in a bottle. One sip and now you know what it feels like to be a medieval contact lens, scraping the inside of a skull, praying for death, or a dentist. On the plus side, your tax bill's smaller if you don't survive the drinking. The Black Death only wishes it hit as hard as some of the stuff peddled by these tax-dodging heroes. You meet the true entrepreneurs. The widow brewing bathtub gin behind false walls. Pubs with secret cellars. Trapdoors leading to more jars than a modern microbrewery, but with triple the risk and none of the winking chalkboards. Margaret, the alewife, gets clapped in stocks for selling a few tankards off the books. Her legacy? Becoming history's answer to Al Capone, only with a 3 a.m. parade of drunks hurling gossip and cabbage instead of Tommy guns. Every crisis breeds innovation. Monks start cooking cherry cordial in crypts. Fishwives are trading smuggled hops in broad daylight. Bootlegging isn't a crime, it's the national pastime. Take that NASCAR. These folks invented the pregame and the afterlife in a single swig. One friar invents a miracle yeast so potent a single batch nearly shuts down the monastery. The bishop calls it a blessing. Tax auditor calls it evidence. Best part. The authorities keep pace with genius price controls that made Netflix's password sharing look gentle. Fines brutal enough to bankrupt a bishop. Legendary figures like Margaret, the alewife, clapped in stocks for brewing on the sly. Her sin wasn't poison, it was profit margin. Small business medieval edition dodge tax lose teeth star in public humiliation tick-tock. Still punishment isn't just stocks and sardonic nicknames. There's jail. The lockup crammed with moonshiners, adulterers, actual criminals. It's hard to tell a difference from the outside. The average sentence. Unclear, official records burned down during that one unrelated fire. But rumor has it half the prisoners died in a week. You're on day 6. Maybe you'll make parole. Maybe you'll hallucinate the original Ale Connor judging your ghost pint from the afterlife. Public health. Never heard of her. Everyone's too busy swapping horror stories about last week's illicit cider or the guy who tried to copperplate his tankard and woke up tasting colors. 1 in 10 locals is missing teeth that dissolved mysteriously. Nobody cares. As long as the mug's full and the tax collector, out with the plague, you live another day. And yet you don't quit. The tavern still roars. The taxman still circling, sniffing out unlawful happiness like a bloodhound with trust issues. Still chained to your mug. Still not dead. Not yet anyway. Next round's on you, unless you can convince the nun in the alley to sell you something medicinal. Good luck. You thought monks were all silent prayer and DIY haircuts. Bad news, your hoppy IPA was born in a monastery basement next to a pile of questionable relics and a bucket for holy water, still picturing those robed boys as sober saints. Beer was their Wi-Fi. Brewing was mandatory. Scrolling TikTok wasn't an option. No Netflix, no doom scrolling. Only a cauldron, a script, and an urgent sense that water was conspiracy-level dangerous. Here's the joke: the holiest men in Christendom were also the original craft beer influencers. Saint Benedict wrote a rule book in 516 CE, basically, pray, work, drink, repeat. Monks brewed so much ale they made the modern frat house look like a Mormon book club. By the 1200s, monasteries owned the only mash tuns that didn't double as plague toilets. Your local dive bar. Less germs, more guilt. Quiet contemplation, more like competitive fermentation. You want a peaceful cloister? Try sleeping through Brother Guy's 4M yeast eruption. Yes, that's a thing. Each abbey was a pitiless startup, record-keeping, equipment upgrades, and the existential dread of running out of hops. Saintly silence meant nobody wanted to admit who dropped the last batch of wort. Monks kept records on malt's hops and which batch cured the most spiritual dryness. Spoiler, it was none of them. Still thirsty. Monastery ale wasn't just for monks. Parishioners lined up like it was medieval Black Friday. Hospitality was mandatory, which meant you could roll into a Benedictine guesthouse, cry about your sins, and stumble out with a 2-day hangover and a new respect for waterboarding. Ever wonder why monks wore sandals? Easier to hose down the vomit. Side effect of holy hospitality: emergency confession by sunrise, sauna of regret by noon. Monastic beer was so legendary nobles sent their tax collectors for samples, not to worship, just to get loaded and complain about serfs. Charlemagne. Guy spent half his reign trying to tax abbey booze and the other half trying to remember where he left his crown. Meanwhile, the monks just brewed stronger. The Black Death killed half of Europe, but monastic beer kept flowing, like baptism but with a better afterparty. You think double IPA is intense. Medieval monks went full liquid bread, more calories than a Big Mac, less chance of salmonella. Lent? No problem, just chug dark ale and call it fasting. God counted the prayers, not the carbs. Cloistered loophole: liquid is not food. 2 weeks into Lent, half the friary has scurvy, but morale's never been higher. Sometimes the monks got creative. Add honey, herbs, even questionable medicinals. Thanks, Brother Bartholomew, my headache gone, but now I can see sound. Not just hops, but mugwort, bog, myrtle, yarrow, whatever made the bread taste less like penance and more like witchcraft. Hospitals run by Cistercians. Beer for patients, beer for nuns, beer for the leper in room 5. Prescription swallow, don't sip. Drink 2 flagons and call the abbot in the morning. It wasn't all sweetness and light. Monks jealously guarded recipes like medieval apple patents, swapping secrets under threat of excommunication or worse, running out of malt. The secret ingredient, survival. Pick the wrong herb, you weren't just tipsy, you were canonized by Friday. Try brewing in an age when yeast is basically sorcery and the thermometer is put your hand in and pray you don't lose a finger. Every pint was a dice roll. Drink the wrong cup, meet the wrong saint. A little too much ergot and suddenly you're speaking in tongues to the wall. Still, every brewery today owes its existence to these wasted hermits stumbling around the cloister, inventing the next morning's regret. Brewing wasn't just a hobby. It was the immune system of the Dark Ages, 1 pint at a time. Want stats? In the year 822, a single Carolingian abbey was brewing nearly 12 gallons a year, enough to hydrate every lay brother, pilgrim, and God-haunted peasant within 5 miles. By the 1500s, some German abbeys taxed their rivals with beer instead of gold. Fast forward, Trappist monks survived 2 world wars, Nazi seizure, and the rise of non-alcoholic lager. Still fermenting, still judging. By now you've got a taproom full of tattooed hipsters serving Abbey Tripel and quoting Thomas Merton. But there's no app for not poisoning your friends. You're still relying on some 900-year-old Belgians' half-remembered notes and the hope your yeast doesn't mutate into plague. Without monks, your collab saison is just flat water and regret. Now, centuries later, you sip your overpriced craft IPA, savor the notes of stone fruit and devotion, and brag about Belgian Trappist yeast. Congratulations, you're only 900 years late to the party, and the only thing missing is the smell of wet burlap and broken vows. Still not a monk, still not sober, still pretending you know what rustic funk means when all you really taste is history, fermentation, and fear. You want to impress your medieval Tinder date. Hope you like gambling with your liver, because nothing says romance like wine that might just kill you before the second course. Half the casks are vinegar, but the better half is straight-up poison. Sure, you'll forget your problems. You just won't wake up to remember them. You dream of clinking goblets under torchlight, but you're more likely to clink teeth right before the lead kicks in. That's right. Medieval fine wine came with bonus minerals, lead powder, courtesy of winemakers who thought sweetener and neurotoxin were synonyms. You want a fun fact? So did the Emperor Nero. He died screaming, and it wasn't because he missed last call. Lead copper pitch. Pick your medieval flavor enhancer. If you liked your brain cells, tough luck. Those clay amphorae, lined with a glistening coat of whatever was lying around the apothecary, tastes metallic. That's your taste buds waving goodbye. Ancient recipes told winemakers to improve a sour batch with a handful of white lead. On the bright side, it covered up the flavor. On the dark side, it covered up most of your nervous system. Still feeling fancy? Better pray you're not drinking Pythagorean wine, aka the septic tank edition, brewed with last year's leftover grapes and this year's bad intentions. The monks in Burgundy were praised for their vintage. They also experimented with embalming fluid, and you thought boxed wine was a hate crime. Textbook medieval quality control, a little oxidation, a lot of alchemy. Sulfur candles in the barrel if your cellar budget stretched that far. If not, you got whatever the mice left behind. Mold. If it floats, skim it. If it sinks, call it notes of terroir. After 1 glass, you'll be seeing double anyway, or possibly triple if the belladonna's burning through your retinas on the way out. Of course, everyone's terrified of water. Poisoned well. Wave at dysentery. But the stuff in your cup is a different flavor of suicide. Death by botulism, death by rotting grapes, death by accidental belladonna. There's an ingredient list Gordon Ramsay would set on fire. You think mixing Red Bull and vodka is risky? Try medieval mulled wine. No espresso martini ever ended in organ failure quite this fast. They even tried flavoring waste into currency. Resonated wine straight from a pine barrel, a kind of medieval pine sol. Helpful for killing mouth bacteria. Less helpful for keeping your intestines inside your ribcage. React to a strong smell. Blink twice if you're alive. Your best hope, dilute it. Water it down, swirl, pray. Because leaving the wine untouched just means you're antisocial, and that's its own death sentence. Stay sober, catch the plague. Get buzzed, catch the funeral. Medieval life is just Tinder with a kill switch. Think you can handle the local tavern? Even kings played Russian roulette with their royal cellars. King John choked to death after a surprisingly piquant vintage, and he had a taster. The rest of you peasants, you taste test for each other. One drops, nobody pours a second glass. Friendship goals with a side of funeral plans. Game of Thrones missed a trick. No need for sorcery when your Cabernet comes with a non-zero risk of instant myocardial explosion. That tavern bard, more likely to have studied mortuary rites than madrigals. You want trivia night? Try guessing which cask killed the last guy. The real party trick: no regulation, zero oversight. Today you whine about sulfites on Instagram. Back then the sommelier just hoped you couldn't taste the arsenic. If the wine made you blind, congratulations, you weren't the first. You won't be the last. No FDA. No Yelp reviews, just rumors and lingering corpses. The only notes in the bouquet: rotting apple, burnt straw, and the faint aftertaste of regret. Pair with bread if you can still chew, or just let the mold do double duty. You wanted cheap wine, right? Enter Van de Piquet, where grape skins get soaked, pressed, then soaked again, like a frat house rag but less clean. It's the original boxed wine, no buzz, high odds of digestive collapse. Welcome to happy hour, where the only thing happier than the drunk is the undertaker. Add to that the local forger tweaking the mix, chalk to lighten animal blood to deepen old urine to make it complex. The kind of chemistry Majorca was famous for. If you see the local priest blessing the barrels, he's not praying for good harvests. He's hedging bets with the archangel of food poisoning. Pick your poison, literally. Drink to forget. Awake in the afterlife. Or better yet, don't awake at all. Someone's already eyeing your share of the bread. Still want to gossip about last night's vintage? Too bad the hangover is permanent, the damage hereditary, and the best you can hope for is to avoid the wrong cask. Half the prisoners died in a week. You're on day 6, still chained, still not dead, but you're 2 cups away from history repeating itself, one ruined liver at a time. You think a bar fight is just spilled beer and pride. Cute. In medieval Europe, it's Yelp reviews, except nobody types everyone stabs and would not recommend comes written in your blood on the floor. You walk in for a drink, you roll out with 3 new scars and a grudge that'll outlive your grandchildren. 5 stars for ambience, 0 for survivability. No bouncer. No happy hour. What's the security system? A club behind the counter and a landlord who's drunker than the guests. It's like Cheers if everyone wanted Sam dead. Talk trash about the ale. That's not a Karen. It's how your teeth end up on the platter next to yesterday's stew. There's nothing medieval about hospitality, but the trauma's always fresh. Bring a knife. Or borrow one. Chaucer drops by a London tavern, gets pelted with insults and stale bread, and still claims it in verse. Call it status. The rowdier the fight, the more locals will remember your name, especially if it's carved next to the toilet. Who needs loyalty points when you get scars as souvenirs? Your only reward for regular attendance is a higher probability of murder. And don't even mention the ale stake, that helpful pole sticking out over the tavern door. Supposedly, it's a sign for thirsty travelers. Actually, it's just a target for desperate jerks or the next contestant in Guess Who'll Bleed Tonight. Think of it as the medieval Uber sticker, except every ride ends with blunt force trauma. You want ambience. Try the perfume of spilled guts and wood smoke torchlight flickering over bruises old and new. Straw stuck to your face from the last man's collapse. Your seat still sticky. The last guy left his dignity stuck to the bench, and something else, probably a tooth. If you're lucky, they'll clean up before Mass, but this is Europe and hygiene is for saints and corpses. Still want to complain? Stand in line. The coroners mostly. The bills overdue, the music's a scream, and the only refund policy involves exile stocks or a surprise beheading on your way home. Congratulations, you survived one night. Check back tomorrow, if you still have your kidneys. Let's clarify what qualifies as entertainment. Forget trivia night. The feature act is 3 drunk mercenaries breaking chairs over each other's backs while a pickpocket works the crowd. Crowd participation mandatory. By open mic, they mean shouting bets on which bastard bleeds first. Miss the main event. There's always the after party, apprentices swinging chamber pots from the upstairs window. You want live music. That's just the barkeep yelling at his wife in 5 languages as a troubadour gets mugged for his loot. Drinks menu is a euphemism. 1 flavor brown, order weak. Get mocked, order strong, wake up 2 towns over minus your boots. Forget cocktails and beer flights, it's all 1 mystery cask and the surprise is dysentery. Complain about the taste and the chef will suggest you take it outside. If you're still standing, you're not drinking it right. Location, location, location. These places are always wedged between the tannery and something even less tempting. The sign says tavern. The smell says abattoir. Sure, those sticky floors are an authentic touch, but the only sanitizing happens when someone sets fire to the place, usually by accident. So yes, you're inhaling 5 centuries of regret and the occasional rat. No light, no rule, still chained to your seat. The only thing medieval about this happy hour is that statistically you're just entering round 2. Tavern etiquette is a contradiction in chainmail. Wait your turn at the counter. Try wait your turn for stitches. Talking politics. That's a shortcut to losing an ear. Mixing with the locals. They'll mix you all right into their next stew. There's always that one guy, missing fingers, blurry tattoo, smells like holy water and terror, who never ever blinks. He's your Yelp reviewer. Sanctuary, not here. If monks wander in, it's to buy information or lose at dice. If the sheriff comes, everyone leaves, in a hurry out the back through someone else's window. Asking for directions is proof you're not from around here. They might help, just to see how well you run with a crossbow bolt in your leg. Bathrooms, please. The closest you'll get is a bucket and a menacing look. You're better off peeing in the street with the horses. At least they won't stab you for line cutting. All this and nobody ever calls it chaos. This is tradition. Tuesday. The price for cheap booze is risking the sort of head trauma that makes you forget your father's name. The tavern is the original social network. You just connect faster when you're bleeding out in a corner booth. Someone will remember you, just not fondly. Still chained. Still not dead. Round 3's up, and so is the landlord's temper. Medieval tavern brawls, less happy hour, more survival challenge. And the only stars you'll see are from the concussion. Feeling fragile. Medieval hangover cures would love to finish the job your ale started. You wake up on a dirt floor, vision blurry, praying for a Gatorade. Instead you get raw eel, a cup of vinegar, and a leech stuck somewhere you'd rather not discuss. Welcome to Self-Care Plague Edition. Forget greasy fries. Sibylla of Anjou recovered from her drinking by chugging cold water, then sprinting outside barefoot. It worked great. Until it didn't. Pneumonia, the OG Monster energy drink. Next time you crawl to the McDonald's drive-thru, just be grateful you're not foraging for moss with frostbite. Not a fan of cold therapy. How about the vomit your sins away school of thought? The prescription: lock yourself in a baking carriage and breathe in boiling vinegar fumes until you beg for mercy or pass out, whichever comes first. Spoiler: it's never the mercy. Searing your nostrils shut is just another Monday on the medieval self-care calendar. You'd think monks had it figured out. Spiritual guidance and herbal remedies poured straight from the cloistered garden. Turns out their secret protein shake was wormwood lavender and a small live frog. For science. Some Benedictines claim the frog attracted bad spirits. What it really did attract salmonella and the urge never to trust holy men with beverages. Now you're hallucinating while the abbot reviews your confession and your pulse. Still seeing frogs, still don't want to talk about it. Alchemists swore by Mercury, not the planet, the liquid metal. Drink it up, they chirped, and you'll sweat out the demons. Also your teeth, hair, and probably basic motor function. Mercury poisoning or spiritual epiphany. In medieval Europe, it's a coin flip. Spoiler: no refunds. Half the patients died before they could complain. The rest gave up complaining when their tongues fell out. Animal remedies. Charlemagne's court recommended a fresh owl egg cracked raw and stirred into wine to restore body and wit. Genius. If choking down vodka yolk doesn't kill you, salmonella will finish the job. For late-night snackers, spread burnt sheep's horn on toast. Because you're not just hungover, you're medieval gluten-free. Maybe you turn to blessed relic water, wholly sterile and guaranteed to fix your headache and or drown you in dysentery. Fun fact: most sacred springs doubled as town dumps. Congratulations, your soul's clean, your guts are not. Try not to die in the queue. Pilgrims swore it lifted the spirits. Statistically accurate, your spirit leaves your flesh in about 6 hours. Physicians, a term used loosely, offered options: smear bacon grease on your temples, jam onions up your nose, or vigorously bleed from a vein. Nothing says healing like a bloodletting kit in the hands of someone who thinks bad vibes are a fluid. 4 pints lighter, you remember you're supposed to feel better. Try again if you're still conscious. In Germany, barber surgeons doubled as hangover specialists. Let's remove a quart, and if that doesn't work, hot irons to your feet. Efficiency that kills. Meanwhile, your local wise woman prescribes nettle tea, but with a medieval twist: 2 sprigs in your shoes, 1 soaked in goat urine to speed recovery. Still groggy? Add some moldy bread for penicillin potential. For the truly bold, swallow a clove of garlic, lock yourself in the privy, and chant until the ache lifts or the neighbors complain. It's not wellness. It's a hostage situation. Still no relief? Hope you like hot coals. Apply directly to the head, said the brave and the brain damaged. Or maybe swallow a roasted mouse. Yes, mouse. Because if death won't come from inside your cup, it'll come inside a rodent-flavored sandwich. Suddenly, hair of the dog looks like the genius option. Bonus: if you survive, you can brag about eating local. Irony. You only got hammered because water was poison. Now the antidote is even worse. Hangover cures deadlier than the night before, and that includes the eel, the mouse, and the guy with the leech. Still chained, still not dead, and tomorrow's another feast day. If that sounds bleak, it's because it was. Half the cures read like pranks written by drunker people. Take the gallbladder of a black goat, slice thin and tuck inside your boot. Who invents this? Someone with a death wish, or just a relentless optimism that the next weird thing will work. Half the patients didn't survive the cure. The other half never drank again, which you have to admit is one way to beat a hangover. Bottom line, you're not hungover, you're auditioning for a spot in the local crypt. Every remedy is a dare. Every healer's advice: try it and see. Like airborne, but for pain. You'd ask for second opinions, but the barber, the priest, and the alchemist just started arguing over who gets your boots if you die. still chained, still not dead, and the drinking starts again at dawn. You want a straight answer from the church about getting lit. Good luck. First it, drink for Christ turned water to wine, and 2 Sundays later it's, repent you reeking sack of sin, your liver is a gateway to hell. You finish your goblet, congratulations, you're either on the path to sainthood or halfway to being burned at the stake. Flip a coin, both sides come up gilt. Medieval clergy history's original influence peddlers. On Monday, Brother Thomas is brewing the Abbey's strongest ale this side of a hangover that feels like original sin. By Friday, he's preaching that your last binge has damned your immortal soul. St. Arnold of Soissons, patron saint of hopheads, his greatest miracle was saving a town from plague by telling them to boil their beer. Sanitary, sure, but mostly he wanted people hammered enough to listen to the sermon. Let's not pretend this is all piety and prayer. Church festivals. Biblical blackout bingo. Pilgrims arrive in borrowed rags, stumble away 3 sheets to the wind because wine is cheaper than water and twice as clean. It's not spiritual elevation, it's sponsored day drinking. Lent Advent, the feast of perpetual regret. Enjoy your communion, ignore the rat in the barrel. And that was just the start. The clergy owned the breweries. Monks didn't just make beer, they made profit. Those stone-walled abbeys, less holy refuge, more corporate distillery with candles. Some years monks brewed more ale than they said mass, 50 barrels bled from a single monastery. Holy business meet unholy headache. Even the fasting rules had loopholes, no solid food father. Beer counts as bread in a mug. Lent became Oktoberfest with worse music. But wait, here come the Puritans clutching their rosaries and moral outrage. Suddenly, alehouses are dens of iniquity, tavern keepers speak the language of Beelzebub, and public drunkenness is blamed for everything from bad crops to that weird rash on Father Bernard's chin. Archbishop orders a crackdown. Brothels still open, beer gets taxed to hell and back. Blame the bottle, ignore the bedbugs. It's always about appearances. The same bishop who drinks Benedictine at his midnight desk calls sackcloth and ashes on the town drunk 5 hours later. Beer funds the cathedral's new roofing. Wine sweetens the whispers in confessional. Repression followed by rent hikes, followed by drink less but tithe more. Church morality is a bar tab written in invisible ink. Hard to read, impossible to settle. The real patrons. Saint Bridget herself supposedly turned her bathwater into beer for thirsty beggars. Priests in France prescribed medicinal wine for migraines and melancholy. Translation: anyone with a pulse. Even the Pope's court ran on Chianti and pious hypocrisy. Medieval England saw archbishops denounce excess right after accepting a tithe paid in barrels. Everyone wore guilt like a cloak. Nobody took it off at the tavern door. God's will depends what hour you ask and who's pouring. The church invented guilt and used alcohol to sell it back. You get labeled a heretic quicker for skipping communion than for pickling your liver, as long as it's on church property. Spiritual whiplash. 1 minute you're kneeling at the altar with wine on your breath, the next you're scrubbing penance from stone with raw knuckles. Hope you like paradox with your morning mass. And the miracles keep muddling. Water into wine, sure, but also water into weak sour ale if your parish runs out of coin. Jesus saves the local priest cells, and by Monday morning you're praying not to the Virgin but to the porcelain. Medieval sermons swing from prohibition to peer pressure, tipsy, God's joy, drunk, devil's playground. 1,000 years, no clear answer, just a lot of empty bottles. Sinners drink, saints drink, and apparently everyone's a secret binge artist hiding behind ritual. One day the monks are inventing double IPAs, the next you're clutching a hair shirt and confessing to crimes against sobriety. The only consistent rule: Whoever reads the Bible loudest decides how ashamed you should feel by dawn. The confessional queue is longer after harvest. Rent is due, crops have failed, and only the wine is reliable, still chained, still not dead. And the church wine still watered down. You thought a DUI checkpoint was humiliating. Try medieval justice. The first breathalyzer is a monk sniffing your breath and recommending amputation. Sobriety test walk a straight line, but the cobblestones are crooked, and so is the judge. Everyone drinks, everyone's guilty. Hangover courts always in session, and your jury. The village dogs fighting over a spilled pint. Hope you like your verdict with a side of fleas. Caught tanked in public. Welcome to the stocks. Like TikTok but with tomatoes, mud, and assorted livestock contributions. The local blacksmith's wife can throw better than your college pitcher. If you're lucky, it's just produce in your hair. If you're not, someone's grandmother is lobbing yesterday's stew. Honestly, the smell's an improvement over your tunic. And don't bother complaining. The town crier's just publishing your disgrace like your medieval clickbait. Fines are technically an option, but money for nobles and the newly dead. For you, it's a week in a pit so dark you forget your own name. No light, no food, no silence, just the constant drip, drip, drip of regret and rat pee. Rumor says some pits were spiked with sharp bones for character development. You leave with new scars and a lifelong fear of dripping water. Luxury accommodation, your only mattress is a heap of straw that smells like last year's prisoners. Want trial by ordeal? Good luck. You're handed a red-hot iron and told to walk 10 paces. Prefer your odds. Try the water version, hands and feet tied, tossed in the village pond. Sink. Innocent but probably dead. Float. Sinner, so they haul you out and invent a new punishment. Love how your survival skills work against you. Real crowd pleaser unless you're the one screaming. King Henry II tries to clean things up with juries, but half the time they're as hammered as you. Trust 12 medieval dads not to swap your fate for a round of ale. Go ahead, roll those loaded dice. Because nothing says justice like 12 men voting with tankards in hand. The alternatives are just as bleak. Maybe you get fined a sack of flour, your left boot 2 chickens if you're feeling generous. Flour's easy until your family runs out of bread. If you're lucky, you pay and crawl home. If not, welcome to the dungeon. Like airmen but for pain. Half the prisoners die in a week. You're on day 6. Still chained. Still not dead. Rats make better cellmates than your fellow debtors. Visit from the jailer costs you your last coin, and the meal is a crust of bread or nothing. Modern rehab centers envy the sobriety rates. Everyone's too terrified to drink again. How about a forced confession? The town justice procures a rusty vice, a splintered stool, and some creative threats. Tell the truth or we test your thumbs. Deny you're drunk and they'll force you to drink to prove you aren't a witch or a liar. Admit you've sinned and you'll serve twice anyway. Lose-lose medieval edition. Meanwhile, the sheriff's already 3 beers in by dawn. By noon, the constable's asleep in the stocks and the Reeves missing his shoes. Don't forget the community service shoveling dung outside the guild hall for a week in the rain. Feel like a model citizen yet? Your neighbors sure don't think so. They're the ones handing you more manure. And for what? 2 tankards and a misremembered song about the bishop's nose. Of course, everyone's nightmare trial by combat. You hungover versus old Gregor, the one-eyed pig farmer who's never lost a fistfight but can't spell mercy. The rules, there aren't any. First blood, last breath, or until the constable gets bored. Forget even odds. The only thing fair is how fast you both end up bleeding in the mud. Loser walks home barefoot. Winner walks home to a bar fight. And the crowd, they're already taking bets on your funeral pyre. Branding's always an option for repeat offenders. Commit triple offense, public vomiting, swearing at the Reeve, and peeing on church steps, and you get a permanent tattoo. Not the cool kind, the kind that screams future jobless peasant. Suddenly those prison chains look like friendship bracelets. Medieval justice loves a souvenir. You hoped for a coat of arms, get a burned scar instead. Justice by tavern lottery, you could wake up king outlaw or just wet and cold under a prayer candle. One unlucky night you get all three. The system runs on ale spite and a bucket for your shame. Heroes are just drunks who ran fast enough. Bars always open. The doors only lock after you're inside. No way out unless you dig through 5 centuries and invent civil rights. So drink up. Meditate on your life choices. Pace yourself before public humiliation becomes your family crest. And remember, next time water tries to kill you, the judge is already drunk, still chained, still not dead. Justice sleeps it off at dawn. You never will. You want one more? Fine. Last call. In the medieval world, that wasn't so much please finish your drinks as hope you said goodbye to your family. You get 3 options. None come with a chaser: banishment, branding, or beheading. Pick one, but don't expect a refund policy. Let's say you went a little too hard at the tavern. Maybe you yelled something creative about the local lord's hygiene, or just tried to pay with cheese when it was taxes only. Congratulations, you just invented public crime. There are no lawyers, only pitchforks. Banishment first. It sounds mild, a medieval gap year, right? No, it's exile without the travel blog. They march you past the village gate with a sack and a prayer. No friends, no money, no future. Remember that bit about water trying to kill you? Guess who's drinking from the ditch now? Enjoy your exciting new role as that suspicious stranger wherever you end up. Shunned by every door, hounded by dogs, spit on by the town kids. Starvation is the most popular menu item. If you get lucky, you might just freeze instead. Medieval weather forecast: endless drizzle with a chance of wolves. Finding yourself meant literally searching for food before some opportunist found your shoes. You could try your luck with branding. Hot iron, casual screaming, and boom, now you're that guy with the face tattoo. Imagine Mike Tyson, but it's a permanent property of drunk justice, label on your forehead. Enjoy never being allowed back into the fun taverns, or polite society, or your mother's grimy shack. There's no hiding it. Every mirror, every pond, every nosy old lady reminds you forever. Dodging the church is a hobby because the pious love a walking cautionary tale. Need a job? Good luck in the medieval gig economy. The only position open is village scapegoat or human scarecrow. Even other criminals avoid you. No one wants justice by association. By the way, infection is inevitable, so maybe brush up on your aromatherapy. Then there's beheading. Fast, efficient, and definitely final. The original unfollow. Slight downside: your last happy hour turns into a public Facebook event attended by the local priest, a dog, and 400 sneering townspeople. Silver lining: at least you won't get banished or branded afterward. Snicker if you want, but the executioner's axe was about as reliable as a midwinter donkey cart. Dull blade, shaky arms, maybe a bet riding on whether you squirm. Missed on the first try. That's extra showtime for the crowd. Think modern sports fans, but hungrier for a good splatter. Bonus: horror legends say the severed head sometimes blinked. Pro tip: don't blink. That's the only critical review that counts. The logic here is simple: get wasted, get wrecked. Even monks weren't safe. Just ask poor brother John, who once brewed beer strong enough to accidentally kill 3 novices and nearly got shipped off for heresy with a side of homicide. So yes, your shots fired end up literal. No one's sacred, especially not after the annual Maypole disaster or Swordfistandale. Crime stats: more like oops, we lost track, too many repeats. Half the prisoners died in a week. You're on day 6. Don't bother appealing for mercy. Medieval due process is a choose-your-own adventure where every ending sucks. Trial: If you can read this, you've got a better shot than most. Odds are you'll face a jury of hungover villagers, one goat, and a judge who skipped lunch. Evidence is whatever the chatty blacksmith remembers, and the only cross-examination is a literal cross. Stiff sentences for soft crimes. Try spending the winter chained in a cellar. Still chained. Still not dead. Everyone's a critic. Screw up your execution, and it's a meme. Guy faints before axe drops. Locals disappointed, executioner embarrassed. Bonus round if the axeman's drunk. 3 swings later you're still on stage. Wobbly justice tastes like old ale and unfinished business. People weren't just punished, they were preserved in legend, usually as a punchline for a decade. That's your legacy, a cautionary tale peddled by people who can't spell your name. Strange, really. Tavern gossip one night, wanted poster the next. You blink and your life become a penalty shootout, except every penalty involves iron torches or gravity. The local justice system is basically a drinking game. Everyone shouts, someone stumbles, and nobody wins. Try to run. They love a chase. Fail to scream, they call you heartless. Survive any of it, that's fodder for next year's tavern stories. Remember the idiot who tried to argue with the Lord's mule? Still limps. Turns out in medieval times, last orders is more than a punchline. It's a warning. No light, no mercy, no closing time. Some parties end in hangovers. Medieval carnival, try open head wounds, way more fun, less recoverable. You designed this festival as a license for sin, but forgot to draw the line at stab-free zone. Congratulations, what started as face paint and bad music just became a horror movie with extra flour, masks on, morality off. Suddenly your neighbor looks like the devil himself, which is less metaphorical when you're 4 mugs deep and can't remember if blood sacrifice was a joke or the main event. Good news. In 1393, King Charles VI of France famously got set on fire during a masquerade. Bad news. That was an improvement compared to getting trampled by the people who still thought circle dancing was safe cardio. Spoiler, it's not, especially after Otto the Cooper decides spinning faster will bring him closer to God and just spins you off into a pike hedge. Here's the party favor nobody wanted: spontaneous street fights. Blame boredom, blame the masks, blame someone else's chicken legs getting stuck in your tunic. However you justify it, chaos is practically tradition. Take the infamous Venice Carnival melee of 1511, when rival guilds turned the city into a no-rules snowpocalypse, using frozen rats as ammunition and braining rivals with snowballs packed with gravel. Childhood nostalgia plus mild concussion. Social boundaries gone. You might find yourself playing Pin the Blame on the Miller's Apprentice, all while hopping someone else trips into the duck pond first. It's an etiquette lesson for masochists. That guy who pinched your wife's ankle is now pelting you with pears and reciting rude poems about your hat. But sure, tell yourself there's a thin line between merry prank and medieval assault. You'll find it at the bottom of a cider barrel or stitched up at the local barber surgeon's, who doubles as the town's most unreliable mortician. Want to test friendship? Share a barrel with the only person in town carrying both a dagger and PTSD from last year's accidental pitchfork joust. The air crackles with boredom, resentment, and the scent of medieval BO marinated in regret ale. So when the drunkest guy in the parish declares you're possessed by spirits, it's 50-50 whether he means ghosts or cheap wine, and 0% chance you're walking home unscathed. Throw in a torchlit parade, a stuffed bear on wheels, and the local executioner leading everyone in a conga line he just invented for crowd control. Suddenly, public disorder becomes audition for martyrdom. You think the local priest would help. He's too busy face down in the cider or blessing the melee before it starts. Look for justice, and you'll find a guy named Guillaume missing 3 teeth and wielding a bench. try not to get branded. Or do in a week, everyone will forget you exist like last year's maypole queen. Pretty sure she evaporated. The only thing holier than the celebrations is the number of accidental puncture wounds. When the fighting finally breaks up, the only sound left is someone groaning that the saints don't cover dental. If disaster had an aftertaste, it would be carnival morning, sticky beer, burnt pastry, and blood on the cobblestones. Children comb the square looking for lost coins or second-hand teeth, while grown men nurse wounds and pride. You wake up not knowing if your black eye came from a mugga monk or some musically inclined goat. Welcome to tradition. Carnival's basic premise: let everyone be someone else and hope they don't pick murderer. One year it's the fishmonger inflating sheep bladders and bombarding the bishop's house. The next it's your own family locked in a flour-fueled grudge match over who started last night's fire. Like medieval Twitter but bloodier and with fewer regrets. Until sunrise when the hangover is inevitable and no one's trending. Somewhere in all this, a toothless jester tries to lighten the mood by declaring death an elaborate prank. It's not. The only punchline is the town apothecary selling out of leeches by noon. Medieval or no cue, no anesthesia, just prayers and a coin tossed to the least trembling sawbones. 15 minutes later you're patched up with pig intestine and irony. You could try leaving early. Good luck. The guard at the gate is asleep, the moat, filled with mud and two musicians dueling in D minor, and the only carriage belongs to last year's mayor. So you blend in. Pretend you're part of the tableau. Stand very still, and maybe no one notices your blood is real, not decorative. Carnival, it's like a medieval purge, except the costumes stink, and the stakes involve real blood on the cobblestones. The only safe exit is passing out early or pretending to be the corpse already. Still breathing at sunrise. Welcome to next year's trauma. And if you're lucky, the only thing you'll hemorrhage is dignity. Or maybe just your hat, your lunch, and a healthy dose of misplaced trust. Either way, same party, same squalor, still chained, still not dead. Happy carnival. Sure, blame the drunk guy. Fire breaks out in the middle of town. Oh, must be all gutter breath, staggering home with a torch again. Never mind the rats, the dry wood, or the neighbor with a serious candle-hoarding fetish. In medieval Europe, drunk and scapegoat shared the same empty wine cup and passed it around like the Black Plague with extra regret. Your weak stagger sip and get named in at least one official disaster. Welcome to another century where the main crime is being the easiest person to point at. You think memes are fast now? Try a murder. One bad harvest, one miraculous cow death, or a lord's missing wig. Suddenly half the town agrees the dude who drools in his mead is planning an uprising. The last coherent thing you said was another round, and now you're starring in Home Alone Witchfinder Edition. The only thing speedier than gossip is your new sentence. 1 minute you're the town joke, the next you're prime suspect in the great jelly shortage of 1377, and an 8-year-old is reciting the list of sins you committed before Sunday lunch. Think this is regional. Guess again, drunk scapegoating goes global. From London's gin-soaked alleyways to Moscow's snow-damp dungeons, the "let's blame the wino" playbook never got lost in translation. The Germans painted tipsy peasants as literal devils in the margins of their prayer books. In Japan, samurai lords grumbled that the rice harvest failed because villagers got too merry during festivals. Around the world, the loudest accusation always found ethanol on someone's breath. Let's meet the pros. Edward II banned drunkards from Parliament. Records show peasants in Estonia were literally arrested for public intoxication. Translation: you were poor and tipsy, so jail. Or you weren't, but someone else needed to blame their hangover on an evil spirit. Ghosts don't pay taxes, but you do, right before you cough up a confession and your last tooth. Venice. Public drunkenness landed you on floating wooden prisons. Think houseboat but with chains, rats, and no bar tab. Eastern Europe invented sobering poles, not for learning lessons, just for chaining you upright until someone remembers why you're there. If you think drunk shamming started with Instagram videos, think again. The local priest writes you into his next sermon, drunkenness as Satan's Wi-Fi. Bishops spinning stories faster than any PR team. A blessed vision told me all our crop failures are because Tobias can't walk in a straight line. Bad weather, bad drunk, plague drunk. Your wife left you. No way, she just hates you, it's the liquor's fault. Bible's got footnotes dedicated to your epic fail. Moral panic centuries before hashtags. A Sunday's highlight, watch the sinful staggering idler get dunked in the river for spiritual cleansing minus the towel. Here, where it gets spicy, never mind royalty literally bathing in imported wine. Isabella of France got wasted and planned coups. This is girl dinner but with knives. But let a carpenter blackout. Suddenly you're the Antichrist's warm-up act, starring in a public flogging with free audience abuse. God forbid you crack a smile, because then you're possessed, bewitched, or worst of all, French. Local nobles held drunken tournaments, sword fights on a 3-day bender, but public urination by a tanner. Break out the stocks and a fresh batch of tomatoes. Everyone's watching you, except the nobles who are already face down in Bordeaux and blaming the cook for their headaches. Legal systems love a scapegoat, especially one too tanked to remember his own trial. Penalties escalate faster than bar tabs, from fine stocks and shame brigade parades, all the way to a nice shallow grave if something goes missing after last call. Yes, the system, as sober as a birthday clown on salary day. Lucky towns invented drunk cages, medieval VIP booths for the terminally unlucky. Law books read like bar menus: 1 offense, pay a fine. 3, lose your shoes. 7, your fertilizer. They invented public drunk tanks centuries before modern club security. Only instead of a cot and a bottle of water, you got a vomit-soaked wooden cell and a total stranger licking the walls for iron. Neighbor comes to bail you out. Too bad he's next. The accusation spreads quicker than cheap gin on payday. Congratulations, your name is now urban decline. Half the prisoners died in a week. Ure on day 6. Legend says drunken idiots brought down empires, summoned plagues, and seduced the priest's favorite pig. It isn't true, but you'll never out-argue a mob on bread rations and a witch scare. Manuscripts blame tipplers for every sin. Wall paintings immortalized you as a collapsed lump creature of chaos, future anecdote for terrified children. Rough, but at least you made it into the arts. Legends outlast facts, and the punchline kicks down the centuries. The hunched drunk in the background was apparently all that stood between civilization and chaos. Your legacy: generations of drinkers dodging pitchforks and praying the bread holds out. Drunk becomes shorthand for anyone who can't prove they didn't hex the miller's wheat. The price is just your dignity. It's everything you own and sometimes your head. Medieval justice: no calories, no closure, no happy hour. Still chained. Still not dead. For now, you survived the tavern, still upright, still sober. Must be nice, unless you've noticed everyone else is suddenly corpse-colored and coughing up their Friday night regrets. Because it's plague season again, and nothing says goodbye immune system like sharing a cup with your favorite pathogen. Still think water's safe, adorable. Pro tip: the Middle Ages had 2 moods, dehydrated or dead. Water, only if you like your drinks with extra parasites. Picture the village well, rats floating like croutons, kids washing their feet, old man Hubert urinating on a dare. Half a town's daily routine all swirling together in your next sip. And no, the clear spring upstream isn't safe either, unless you trust upstream to mean where the tannery dumps animal guts. Here's the real recipe: equal parts desperation, half a rat in the well and a pinch of denial. Official advice: just drink anything but water. Beer if you've got it, wine if you're rich, something called small ale if you're neither. That last one's basically bubbly pond water with vodka's self-esteem issues. It won't kill you on day one, but the bacteria might just bide their time. Nature's Russian roulette, brought to you by St. Arnold, patron saint of please don't die, just drink. Monks praying over barrels, swearing the alcohol will save you, because God knows chlorine won't. Good news, small ale won't get you drunk. Bad news, small ale won't get you sober enough to ignore the taste. Medieval Gatorade, but with more edible mud. Still longing for wine. Sure, as long as you're clocking noble status. Peasants get to press grapes, then trudge home for millet beer that smells like wet fur and heartbreak. The guarantee nothing in your cup is safe. Cider bursting with wild yeast, cloudy mead going bad faster than your neighbor's teeth. And when the plague rolls into town, your sommelier is a monk with trembling hands and plague boils under his habit. Let that swirl in your goblet. Pretend tannins matter on your way out. And what happens when the Black Death rolls through your block? Simple. You dose yourself with enough booze to forget mortality has a guest list. The monks crank up production, the peasants empty the barrels, and Queen Joanna of Naples institutes wine quarantine. No, not to save you, just to make sure nobles still have Merlot when the rest of you are too contagious to riot. Pro tip: liquor doesn't disinfect typhoid, but it does make dying next to a chamber pot seem like a carnival. Fast forward to crisis mode. The doctor's shrugging, the priest's too drunk to listen, and the local town council is handing out more misinformation than TikTok. Ale purifies all becomes the mantra. Never mind that the last 3 mayors died with their heads in a bucket. Outside, water carriers call out, pushing leaky barrels and coughing into their palms. Nobody is sober, nobody can remember a time before the taste of sour beer, and nobody trusts a clear drink. It's a world where lemonade could legally be classified as poison. Go ahead, try to tough it out with safe drinks, or stick with the water collecting cholera like Pokemon cards. Every sip is a bet. All in-house always wins. Didn't die of thirst this week. Plague still thirsty, and so is everyone you know. It's not a party until half your family's gone and the other half's too drunk to dig the graves. Learn from the best. Geoffrey Chaucer spent half the Canterbury Tales with a headache and the other half with an alibi. Town records. 15% of deaths blamed on ale fever, which is code for too broke for wine, too proud for water. One London parish lost 40 people to refreshment. Refreshing. Could you imagine? Modern times superfoods and sterilized Brita filters. Yet one pandemic and you're raiding the craft beer aisle for gluten-free plague survival. You're no different. Every era ends with someone clutching a mug praying to be the exception. Some things never change, except now the rats use TikTok. So go on, pour another. It's historical, it's authentic, it's the choice that hasn't killed everyone. Still alive, good, still sober, the Black Death, pouring itself a drink, hope you brought a cup. If not, don't worry, the plague's happy to share. You survived medieval booze, congratulations. Now you're a modern drinker clutching your boutique IPA with a recyclable label looking smug. Here, the punchline: nothing's changed. You're still drinking like a peasant hiding from the water supply, just with more hashtags and less visible dysentery. Microbreweries, gluten-free ales, cocktails with basil. Every sip is another prayer the tap water isn't trying to kill you. Spoiler, it probably is, just with more bureaucracy. Liquid gold, they called it. Ale, wine, mead, pick your poison literally. Medieval purity laws, cute. Most drinks came preloaded with bonus heavy metals, questionable fungi, and the lingering aftertaste of failing infrastructure. Remind you of anything. Lead pipes, cryptosporidium, that one mysterious smell in your city's tap. You could say you're living the dream. The same bad dream, just in high def. People romanticize the old recipes. No one ever mentions the barley rotting in mouse-infested barns, or that hops were less flavor enhancer, more frantic attempt to mask the smell of failure. Love that rustic farmhouse sour. That's the echo of a plague year batch fermented in a wooden vat scraped clean with a bloody straw. It wasn't flavor, it was survival panic. Your 14 flight is their moldy insurance policy. Ever heard of St. Arnold of Soissons? Medieval patron saint of beer because regular saints weren't pulling their weight in hydration. The monks brewed for Jesus, and for not dying of thirst, which are pretty much the same thing, don't argue. Modern saints. You've got craft beer influencers, TikTok mixologists, and middle managers on Dry January who keep bending the rules by day 4. Still thirsty, still cheating death, only now you pay more for artisanal glassware. Let's talk legacy. Medieval nobles built their fortunes on grain, then drank the profits, then taxed the survivors. You call it happy hour, they called it not starving barely. Flash forward, your bar tab funds skyscrapers and lobbyists while your local whiskey traces back to a hedge fund in Luxembourg. The peasants are just you, but with slightly better dental hygiene and marginally less chance of dying from the stew. Every tavern had its rot gut, cheap, guaranteed to rot your gut. Now rot gut is small batch bourbon matured in a barn that doubles as a wedding venue. The bottle costs more than a serf's annual rent, and you still wake up feeling like you drank from the Thames during a septic overflow. In both timelines, the hangover is eternal and the flavor profile is wooden shoe and regret. Wine, you asked. The Black Death loved red. Half those casks were flavored with pitch lead or vinegar, enough to weaponize communion. Now you swipe right on grocery store Merlot, pat yourself on the back for the antioxidants, and wonder why your tongue tingles. Maybe it's the mouthfeel. Maybe it's history staging a comeback. Taxation, medieval kings squeezed pennies from muddy barrels. You, on the other hand, tip well and get fleeced on $10 pints with names like Ye Olde Smog Monster IPA. The local government thanks you. Your liver files a complaint. Drinking games. Medieval version was Russian roulette with dysentery. Communal mugs, zero germ theory, and a barmaid who refilled every cup with the same battered ladle. Fast forward, you sip a fancy cocktail off a menu that reads like a ransom note. Still communal, just with more QR codes and invisible pathogens. Progress. There's authentic experience, and then there's performance art. They risked death for a half-clean mug. You risk shame for ordering a Bud Light at a microbrewery. They stare down spoiled ale with floaters. You stage an existential crisis over a slightly warm IPA. Both end with regret and self-loathing. Some things don't evolve, they just get rebranded with better glassware. Ever had the bad batch? In the Middle Ages, everyone did. Grain fungus, contaminated barrels, unknown proof. Drink enough and you'd hallucinate your sins. Welcome to limited release season. Today bars celebrate wild fermentation, code for sorry about the taste, it's a feature. Bring back the rat pellets, at least you knew what you were swallowing. The mutual fantasy that drinking is safer, classier, evolved. Spoiler Chapter 2, the biggest spirits conglomerate on Earth got sued for glass particles. In 1364, London's ale tax killed more people than homicide. Today, responsible drinking means Uber aspirin and pretending you can taste the lavender. Swap the hooded executioner for a financial advisor. Dead either way, you just call it networking opportunity. You want purity. Water's still suspect, beer's still expensive, and every authentic experience has a price tag. Medieval drinkers risked being poisoned by the landlord. You risk being poisoned by nostalgia for a time when organic meant it came with bugs. One legacy survived. Not the taste, the denial. So here you are, still searching pubs for meaning, paying premium for a pint that could double as pancake batter. The medievals would laugh or sue for royalties. Either way, you're still part of the world's longest hangover, and history isn't giving you the hair of the dog. Still wasted, still wishing the water was safe. Still chained, still not dead.